This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. I'm always loving the process of how books come together and the concept originates. We're going to talk with somebody today who has created a murder mystery series. It's a little bit different. And we're going to start with the publisher. Mark Pogodzinski is back with us. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Very well. Who do we have with us?
So I have Mr. Timothy Brown, who is the author of a mystery series, the Sam White murder mystery series. And always fast. Murder mysteries are great. Agatha Christie remains a bestseller to this very day. Sherlock Holmes is the preeminent detective who carried an entire series of stories and books, movies, and again, to this day, remains incredibly popular. So I thought it was interesting that Tim was creating in that type of area, a detective who has different adventures and can carry a book series. And his creation, Sam White, seems just a fascinating character. And then some of the historical references in the books are really bring something more than the normal murder mystery detective story. Interesting.
Tim, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
First question that's on my mind here is this is called the Sam White Homeless Mystery Series. Homeless. Tell us why.
Yeah, well, write what you know. I was a social worker for about 40 years and mostly directed and managed homeless and mental health programs in Sacramento. And so I knew a lot of homeless characters, fascinating people. And I've been involved since the late 70s. I mean, when I first got involved, we didn't have homelessness. If you were around then, you'll remember we had, public drunkenness and, same drug use, but housing was so affordable that, we just didn't have homelessness. And when Reagan got in and cut the housing budget by 70%, it's just gone downhill ever since. So I wanted to write about, some of the history of that. I'm a history buff. I like historic fiction. And so each of my books starts with a prologue, historic fiction. The first one was a gold miner in the 1850. And the second one was Sir Francis Drake traveling around Mexico and leaving some treasure behind. So that I love treasure books, obviously, and I love murder mysteries. And I was trying to, create something a little different with the homeless characters taking a pretty important part in the books, and to try to make homeless people seem human, and fully human. So anyway, that's kind of what I set out to do. And once you get started on a story, the story kind of gets a life of its own, I found, at least for me. And I went in some directions I didn't really plan to go in, but seemed to fit,
I want to go back to Tim. Now, you mentioned Squatter's Gold. Did I hear you right in saying that is centered around the 1850s?
It starts with a prospector coming over, Irish guy who came through Boston, much as my family did in the 1840s. He found gold. He was there early, and he got up in the hills and found quite a bit of gold. It was spent a year mining a creek bed there, and then had his came back to Sacramento, which was a boom town, and a lot of people didn't find gold, and we had a historic event called the Squatters' Riots in 1850, and that was basically homeless people who didn't find gold and were stuck in the boom town and just squatted on land that other people eventually claimed. And, a few people made a whole lot of money there just in Sacramento. providing all the stuff you need to start a city and the whole gold craziness. But anyway, they try to rob him on his way back to Sacramento with his gold, so he decides to hide some of it, and actually, oh, I won't give it all away, but he's involved in the squatters' riots. I'll say that, and the gold is not found by him again.
I have to tell you, the that period, 1850s, 60s, 70s, 1880s, and right up to like maybe 1890, one of my favorite time periods.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even tell you why, but I think part of it is because photography started. So you see real pictures. It's not just drawings, and you wonder, I wonder if it was really that way or not that way. And there was some technology, but it was still a much simpler way of life. And it's a interesting time. Have you seen 1883, the series?
I've watched some of it. Yeah, I saw the beginning ones. I want to get back into it because I love that period too. It's
it's an interesting. Is prequel to Yellowstone, but the series is like kind of gritty, kind of dark, but kind of cool. And I think in my the historical side of me would say pretty accurate. And now I'm watching 1923, which picks up from where it left off, I guess. Different, especially even the colors, they're more vivid. Where 1883, it had just a kind of a muted vibe to it. The homeless side of things. You working with people who are and have been homeless, you must, in your journey, met a lot of people who brought so much to society. They just happen to have fallen on hard times and homeless. What did you discover in that journey?
A whole lot of stuff. I mean, so many of these people have a lot still to give and gave a lot, and had health problems, had bad luck. It doesn't take much. And now it's even worse, I mean, housing's so expensive, especially in California. Mm-hmm. Got one of the highest homeless populations in the country, if not the highest. And, thousands, tens of thousands. I mean, when I first got involved, it was in the mid 80s, there was a few hundred homeless people in Sacramento, and that was not good, but now there's 5,000-6,000 homeless people in Sacramento. And before I retired, and for years before that, I helped build a homeless service system and help get some permanent supportive housing, programs for homeless folks. And we did pretty good. I mean, when I retired, I think we had maybe 1,500 homeless people, but 1,000 of them were inside a program somewhere. Now we've got like 6,000 people and about 2,000 are maybe in the program somewhere. So it's gotten really bad. And every neighborhood is affected because people end up staying where they know, or they grew up, or their family is, or their friends. And, you got these homeless camps in almost every neighborhood now. It's really sad.
Where did your affinity for mystery series, murder mystery, where did that come from?
Good question. I remember reading my first book at about 12, at least like a novel, which was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And that just took me off, I've loved reading ever since. And I love those kind of adventures. The murder mysteries are just, entertaining and make you think about, the twists and turns they take. And I'm not sure when I read my first murder mystery, maybe the Hardy Boys or something like that.
There's a title I haven't heard in a long time. Wow. You mentioned just briefly, Tim, at the beginning, the writing process where you start and then it just kind of takes on a life of its own. Can you walk us through that? Do you define the characters? Do you come up with an outline? Like, what's the starting point? And then where does the magic happen where it just kind of takes off?
Yeah, well, it is quite a problem. I mean, I took basically almost 5 years to write each of the two books I've got out so far. And I was retired. I wasn't writing full time, but yeah, I mean, I started with a historic prologue, I think is what I did, and with an idea that I wanted to feature certain periods of time. The books take place when I was the director of a large homeless program called Loaves and Fishes in Sacramento, an interfaith program, and we served at least 500 people a day a hot lunch, and a whole score of other programs. We had our own park people could stay in during the day, and had hundreds and hundreds of homeless people, even thousands, coming through our place every day. And so, I had a lot of characters in my head that I wanted to, adapt from. And so, I tried to get one of my main characters who, at least in the start of the book, is a deaf homeless guy who, never really had a chance being deaf, and couldn't get work, and he was on disability, and he was with a guy who was an alcoholic, and one of them finds the gold, and unfortunately bad things happen to them. But anyway, so I started with a murder mystery and with homeless people in the center of it, and then my Sam White character is sort of autobiographical, and so it's I have him get involved with these various characters who he knows through the homeless center, and but then in between it just like who's the bad guy, and who's develop the bad guy characters, the murderer characters, and all that. It was fairly, I mean, I'd read a ton of books, but I hadn't really written one before about that. And like I said, it find out, you get down to, you take these characters where you kind of think and they would go and where you want them to go, and then it starts taking a life of its own. You have to figure out how to bring it all to an end, to a climax, and to have it be entertaining in the middle, And
do you find like when it starts taking off, now you got to start reeling it back in?
Yeah, I mean, working with Mark, I mean, I developed an early manuscript, and in terms of, I wasn't somebody who started with an outline. Although when I got about a third of the way into the book, it got confusing, and I had to make my list of characters and my outline. And I didn't really have a future outline. I kind of left it open and took my time thinking about it. That was part of what I was doing, was just taking my time, thinking it through, and that's why it took me a while. And that was a great process for me. Anyway.
Yeah, I want to check in with Mark. With what you got from Tim, what was it? And then how did you craft it and move it forward?
The outline, like the bones of the book, I thought were great. I like the idea that the historical prologue, I think, is really grabbing for a reader. And you see a couple very famous books that do that combine real things, the reality of history, and then it becomes a fiction. You find some little nugget of interest, like the riot, and at the fact that there might be gold, and then you take that and you create an entire plot line based on that. And there's been many famous writers who've done that. Possibly one of the most famous was Philip Jose Farmer, who did it with the character of Tarzan, where he took the Burroughs books and then rewrote them so it became more historically accurate. So I thought about that when I saw Tim's book, the idea of like, okay, this happened, and now these fictional characters are picking up the pieces, and then to add the layers of social commentary about homelessness, and then to add yet another layer of murder mystery. I thought there was just so much going on, and that once we got into the process and we streamlined everything, I think the book came out incredibly well, and one of the more entertaining books a person could read. because it has so many different things going on. You can read it for social commentary, you can read it for history, you can read it for that combination of history and fiction. So the idea was there, and we just had to craft it to make sure that it was readable and enjoyable for an audience.
It's interesting the history within. We're talking about the 1850s, the gold rush, homeless situation, which has been, I would imagine, since the beginning of time, all real. So a lot of history within. Tim, how much fact checking did you have to do? How concerned were you with that to make sure that things were as accurate as they could be?
Yeah, I did a lot of research on the gold rush era and the squatters riots. And strangely enough, there isn't much written about the squatters riots. It got buried after it happened in the press. And so it's bits and pieces you get from this, person and that person who wrote about the history. And it's fascinating. I mean, that was our first, homelessness in Sacramento. I mean, these guys basically had no money, had no place to go. And they were squatting. And then, the people came in and bought the property and wanted them off. And people were killed. I mean, there was a riot, and I think the sheriff got killed, and the leader of the squatters got killed. And it was a fascinating history, which I didn't know. I knew there was a squatters riot. I didn't know the details till I really got into the idea of that. And it's fascinating. And it's been kind of, there's a sign in Sacramento, but I don't know if most people in Sacramento would remember the squatters riots. It kind of got buried in the press. I think the people in power didn't want that to get out. Sacramento was booming.
Well, interestingly, though, I'm looking at this where Sam is the director of homeless services for an organization, and then your professional life, that was a part of you. So it's almost, if you have some more latitude with that, if we insert your name, it's kind of connected to you in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Jim Brown, Sam White. Yeah, without making it like super obvious, I tried to do that. But yeah,
you knew it well. You knew it well.
And the first part of the book, I really did insert a lot of the politics that goes on locally with homelessness. I lived that. I mean, we had our before I was a director, the Loaves and Fishes was sued by the city. It was a big national story. And they eventually dropped that lawsuit because it made them look bad. But that's the kind of stuff that happens in the business community. It's not thrilled because we're like 10 blocks from the state capitol. And, people had their eyes on this land, which used to be the old rail yards. And, us having a homeless program in the middle of it was not accepted by all. We had a lot of enemies. The thing that was amazing about the program, and which I tried to get to in the book a little bit, was that we were almost entirely a volunteer organization. We had thousands of volunteers. We had a different faith group come every day to cook a meal for 500 people. And it was remarkable. It was started by two friends of mine who are passed now, but Dan and Chris Delaney, who were Dorothea Day followers and Catholic workers. And they had a thing about hospitality. We're going to make people feel at home. They don't have to do anything. We're going to make sure people have a meal and can get a little bit of help, if they're ready. And I think we did a great job of that, and we helped a lot of folks. But with homelessness, you lose a lot of folks, too, and that's the tragedy. Last 2 years in Sacramento, 500 homeless people died.
To illustrate this, I do a lot of charity work. I've been doing it for years, all different organizations. I never forgot this one thing that the organizer of one of the groups said. Any of us can be one paycheck away from being homeless. You never know what's going to happen. And the stories, I'm sure, just briefly here, just to illustrate, Can you think of somebody that you were connected to who was homeless and where they came from?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's endless characters. There was a guy who worked in the Carter administration and had a great job and a great future, and I think like cocaine and alcohol dragged him down, and he eventually got better and got off the streets. But he was homeless for a while, quite a while, and he's somebody who you wouldn't think was homeless, a white guy with a great job and political connections. Yeah, I mean, there's a big racial component too. Obviously, like in Sacramento, Black people make up about 11% of the population, and they're about 35% of the homeless population. Native Americans make up about 2 or 3% of the population, and they're about 6 or 7% of the homeless population. So there's a lot of racial, talk about racial disparities and health disparities. That's what you find, one thing and one interesting fact is that about 10% of very low income people, which is defined by government agencies, become homeless every year. And it's generally very poor people on the edge who become homeless, but people come from all walks of life and have families that, are, they either burn out or their families have tragedy and then they don't have any support. And it's, there's endless reasons. In the book, my main homeless character was somebody who had a job and a family, and his 3-year-old daughter drowned in their pool, and he just lost it. And I remember I heard stories like that, some incredible trauma or tragedy happens, the family falls apart, and people fall into homelessness, And so that's the difficult part, is the dealing with the grief, and but the rewards are, exponentially better.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
through your books. Thank you for shining a light on the situation. Nobody just chooses, hey, I'm going to be homeless tomorrow. This is my way of life. There's always a situation leading to that. I have to tell you, just even looking at the covers of the books, I knew I was going to like them right away.
Thanks.
It is.
My stepson did the covers. He's an artist in Los Angeles.
Oh, real? Okay.
Chris Oliveira. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of got a very raw vibe to it, but it almost could be like the cover of somebody's notebook, in some regards. Mark, any additional thoughts on working with Tim on these stories?
Well, I think you can tell from talking to him the passion that he has about what he did for a living, and then hopefully taking that passion and putting it into the fiction. As I said, one of the main things that I would think would draw someone to these books is not only the murder mystery, which is always, for lack of a better word, popular, but the social commentary and the aspects of society that he delves into while telling this intricate tale of crime and history. So again, the levels of his books, I think, that set them apart from most.
Squatter's Gold and Baja Silver, 2 books in the series. Thank you both for all the insight today. I have to tell you, Mark, every time we get together with people that you work with, it's just you learn so much about this process. And even though a writer is publishing a book, it's so different every single time, where the ideas come from, how somebody works, put the stories together. If you want to learn more, NFB Publishing is the place to go, nfbpublishing.com, if you want to connect with Mark. Both of you, Mark and Tim, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind, like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind, like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama, like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ed Council.